Became the third wheel in my own relationship, as my boyfriend bought a house with his sister, expecting me to pay rent. I'm a 30-year-old woman, thriving financially, proud of the home I bought in Southern California with a 30-year loan at a miraculous 2.65% rate and a solid 20% down payment. Over the years, I've invested $50 into upgrades, and my financial health is exactly where I want it. Renting out 2 rooms help even more, but recently, I gave notice to one of my tenants because my boyfriend, who's 31 and had been living at his parents' place ever since graduation, was finally moving in with me. He and I had planned this move for ages, choosing the right time for our relationship and ensuring my tenant had fair notice. His parents' place is only 13 minutes from mine, both of us nestled in the suburbs of Southern California. For the past few months, we'd been house hunting, dreaming, planning, looking at homes in a nicer area, coincidentally the same part of town where his parents live. Nothing lined up, though. Gradually, the search shifted gears. Suddenly, it became less about him and me, and more about him and his sister. That's when things started to twist. The down payment would come from his parents' early inheritance, they called it split with his sister. The two of them would join forces to buy a grand home, instead of settling for something moderate each. The plan was clear: sister provides 50% down payment via parents, my boyfriend takes a loan for the other 50%, and together they tackle a $1 million budget. Then the perfect house sprang up, practically around the block from his parents. That house was listed for $1.3 million. They jumped. In a frenzy, they offered $1.46 million, all cash thanks to his parents, and won it. The deal: my boyfriend shoulders all the cost over $1 million, paying his parents back. Escrow's almost up, just a few days to go. But after inspection day, another twist. The inspection revealed a laundry list of nightmares. The house needed new copper plumbing, a roof replacement, upgrades for the electrical system, a cracked driveway, and the entire interior was original, screaming for renovation. No problem, they said. The original plan became, we'll remodel everything before moving in. Not for long. Now it's let's move in, suck it up, and worry about remodeling later. Meanwhile, I started feeling like a third wheel in my own relationship. This was all spinning so fast, and I couldn't see my place in the picture. I had to sit my boyfriend down. I want a future with you, but what's the plan here? I'm a long-term planner, and suddenly I'm faced with living with you and your sister or not living with you at all. I want to marry you, not your sister. His answer: once we're ready to start a family, we'll find another place. In the meantime, he crunched the numbers and handed me a spreadsheet. My rent would be $1,100 plus a third of the utilities, whether the house is remodeled or not. Meanwhile, I would have to rent out my own house, manage a property, and deal with the tax side of rental income. The wild part: I'd be paying rent toward a house that my boyfriend doesn't even fully own. He owns it with his sister, and the whole thing is underwritten by his parents. I'd always dreamed that my home could be a springboard leverage to upgrade to something better, or at the very least, a long-term investment. But how does this math ever work out for me? If neither my boyfriend nor his sister has true financial independence, how will they separate from each other later? How does one buy out the other? What happens when we want our own home? And don't get me started on the timing. With interest rates climbing ever higher, I'm terrified of what securing a loan to pay back his parents might even look like. Nobody here is desperate for a home. His sister lives with her parents. My boyfriend and I live comfortably in my house. But they are all completely sold, swept up in dreams of this neighborhood, with his parents and his sister building a future that's somehow supposed to include me, even though there's literally no space for a life partner to join. My boyfriend is obsessed with how it's the best neighborhood, how the house will appreciate in value. He repeats it so much it loses all meaning, especially since he'll be owning it with his sister, and I'm left out of the ownership equation. It's not about the family, they are wonderful people. But my boyfriend and I want marriage, and I can't see a future in which I can be shoehorned into this complicated, lopsided financial scenario. I know my boyfriend doesn't like the area where my home is now, but is that really enough reason to entangle ourselves in a mess with his parents and his sister? I don't want to be trapped inside a situation where I'm renting my own house just to pay his family for the privilege of living with everyone but myself. At that time, my boyfriend was living with me in the house that I own, still paying a standard mortgage, and I'd always rented out my extra room to help lighten the financial load. The whole process of us shifting our lives to make this work became incredibly stressful for me. He started changing his plans and terms almost constantly, and a lack of communication made everything even more frustrating. He moved out the day after they closed escrow and didn't tell me this was his plan at all. I'd asked him whether he was going to move right in, and he simply said yes. That created my first big problem. I had already given a 45-day notice to my second roommate so that my boyfriend could have the space. Now, he'd left me with an empty second room and I lost the rental income. He didn't offer to cover any of that lost income, which stung. It was a mess. After a lot of soul searching, I made a deeply personal, tough decision. I chose to sell my home and move in with him. Living in Sokol, my house went into escrow almost immediately, and I was set to close in just 2 weeks. This would help relieve the constant family tensions in my life. I had a financial tie with my dad, since I paid him monthly for the down payment, plus interest, and would give me some comfort if things with my boyfriend went south and I had to move again. But then the second big problem set in. I realized quickly that I wasn't just moving in with my boyfriend, I was moving in with his family, too. I'm not living there just yet, but I've noticed via the ring camera and from my visits that his parents are there every single day. They live around the corner, and it's a lot. Both parents and his sister are extremely nice, but it's starting to feel like a major step backward. I'm about to give up that treasured one-on-one time with my boyfriend, something I really value. This is a world away from having a roommate who just lives their own life. This is going to be living with a family member in a seriously enmeshed family. My whole adult life, I've chosen to live with Craigslist roommates because I figured out ages ago that I cannot stand living with friends. It's overwhelming to have my social life follow me home. I'm a socially skilled introvert, and I need space. With every day closer to moving in, I feel the panic rising. We did sit down and have an honest discussion about the timeline for eventually moving out of this house, and about exactly what boundaries need to look like with his family. Still, I'm terrified that I'll feel deeply uncomfortable. I'm not even living there yet, and the parents' constant visits already bother me. I've caught myself looking at guest houses to rent, just browsing, just in case. And my boyfriend is pouring money into this house, dumping money, really. It makes me feel farther and farther from the goal of us having a place that truly belongs to both of us. The facts aren't even in our favor. Ownership is 90% his sister, 10% my boyfriend. He pays her monthly on a 4-year term so he can reach 10% ownership. When I asked him, "Why are you putting so much money into a house you'll only own 10% of?" he just told me, "Because I'm living there." As a homeowner myself, I can't wrap my head around that. I'll be living there too, but I won't be spending all that money on upgrades. I told myself I'd give it 2 months, just 2 months living there. If I'm really miserable, I'll leave. But I need advice. Should I put the brakes on now, turn back, and just rent a place for a while? Maybe see if our relationship can grow outside of this pressure cooker? Part of my anxiety is definitely from not feeling like this house is home. I feel completely like an outsider. Maybe that will change with time, but right now, their family is always in contact, group chats every day, dinners out together, a lot of interaction. Grocery shopping as a crew. I don't think that being close to your family is a red flag, but I do think not setting boundaries with an overbearing family might be. Finding a new place to rent isn't easy either. I have a small dog who needs a yard, so that narrows the field a lot. And with the way leases are, it's tricky and pressure-filled to decide. On top of everything, despite providing tons of notice of cancellation, contracts are contracts, and I was only able to get back 25% of the venue deposit, which was the largest deposit. I didn't get any of the other money back, and this all adds up to a massive financial blow, over $25 lost. There wasn't any cheating, no abuse, nothing dramatic. I'd like my boyfriend to reimburse me fully, but knowing how he is, I'll be lucky to see a single dollar. I plan to ask him to pay at least 50%. I'm willing to set up a payment plan, but if he refuses, I'm considering pursuing legal action under promissory estoppel laws. Do I have a case here? Update 2. I didn't end up moving my things in. The weekend I'd penciled in for a quiet, low-stakes trial run at the new house turned into something else. I brought my dog, a suitcase, and groceries for 2 nights. I $7.20 a ma. M. On Saturday, his dad let himself in with a contractor, no text, no knock, just keys in the door and voices down the hall. I was in a rope, coffee half poured, and my dog went nuts. They were there to take a quick look at the panel and the attic access. 10 minutes stretched into an hour, then 2, and it ended with a conversation at the kitchen island about tearing out a wall before the holidays. When I asked for a heads up in the future, his dad was genuinely kind, but confused why I'd even need one. "We're here every day anyway," he said, smiling like it was the most normal thing in the world. That night, I learned there's a family group text called House Ops. I was added without warning. It pings constantly: paper towels, Costco runs, plumber Edis, a string of photos of paint swatches and Amazon links for towel bars. His sister sent it over a Google Doc titled House Guidelines with a bright cover page. It had bullet points about quiet hours, shoe policy, dog rules, and a note that overnight guests, meaning my friends, not hers, need 48 hours notice so we can align on the calendar. I stared at that phrase, align on the calendar, and realized I was about to be a tenant in my boyfriend's family project, not a partner in my own life. Meanwhile, my escrow did a hard swerve. The buyer's appraisal on my place came in thin and flagged the sunroom as an unpermitted addition, news to me, since it was there long before I bought the house. They demanded a $23 credit and wanted the close pushed by 2 weeks. My agent asked what I wanted to do. My dad, who I've been paying back every month for the down payment, told me to run the math twice and then listen to my stomach. I slept on it and woke up with a clear no. The buyer canceled. I kept their earnest money deposit, which wasn't life-changing but still real, and pulled the listing. I went straight back to my lender, locked a home equity line before rates ticked again, and put a formal note in place with my dad at a cleaner, fixed rate. I suddenly had something I hadn't had in months: options. The next morning, I told my boyfriend I wasn't moving in. Not like this. Not to a house that isn't ours, not with the rain catching his parents' sobs in the driveway morning and night, not with me paying $1,100 to subsidize a remodel I have no say in. He went silent, then opened his spreadsheet again like we hadn't already had the conversation. "You're looking at it emotionally," he said. "It's math." I reminded him that the math is exactly why this doesn't work for me. I own a house with an absurdly good rate. He and his sister own a house underwritten by his parents, and I'm being told to take the role of a third roommate with rent due on the first. When I said I'd rather find a short-term rental and date like adults, he looked hurt and then defensive. "This is our future," he said, gesturing around, as if the studs and the ancient copper in the walls would get up and defend him. Then the house itself chimed in. The plumber shut off the water for 6 hours on day 2 to scope lines. His sister dashed back to her parents with a laundry basket and texts about how flexible we all needed to be. His mom showed up with sheet pans and prepped meals and rewired the pantry without asking, then told me, sweet as anything, that I should label my shelves so we know what's yours. My dog got scolded for putting a paw on the couch. I took my suitcase home. I did ask about the money I lost when I canceled everything. I sat him down with exact figures: the venue deposit, the vendors, the 3 retainers that evaporated the second I said the word cancel. He nodded. He knows every number as well as I do. I asked him to split it. He said he didn't have it and also didn't think it was fair, because we hadn't set a date. That part knocked the wind out of me. I had confirmation emails and calendars and a printed estimate with his name and signature. I drafted a demand letter with an attorney's help, clean, unemotional, and honest about what I intended to do if we couldn't agree. His mom called me the next day, almost in tears, and offered $5,000 to help, to just make this not a thing. It felt like hush money, but it was also money. I took it and wrote his mom a receipt that spelled out exactly what it was and wasn't. Then I filed in small claims for the rest against him, because the paper trail is, for once, not in his favor. There was a second, stranger turn a week later. His sister brought her new boyfriend to Sunday dinner at the house and, in front of me, floated that he might crash here for a while once the back bedroom is painted. She spoke fast, like a person tossing facts onto a moving treadmill. "He has a crazy commute, it won't be long, he's easy." She laughed and told me they'd keep my rent the same. My boyfriend didn't say a word. I felt this electric stillness come over me, like the way it gets before an earthquake. I asked, out loud, if this is the setup they expect me to buy into for the next year. She blinked at me. She hadn't even realized she'd just answered my question for me. Here is what actually happened next. I signed a 6-month lease on a back house 10 minutes from both places, with a yard and a lemon tree and a landlady who leaves a basket of tomatoes on the porch when hers are ripe. I kept my house. I put the spare room back on the rental market and had 3 qualified applicants in a day, traveling nurses who don't blink at my rules. I took the one with a steady contract and no dog. My boyfriend and I started meeting on neutral ground: coffee shops, the beach, a table in the back of a taco place we've been going to since before this all got complicated. Without his house breathing down my neck, I can't hear him again. We're in couples counseling now with someone who knows the word enmeshment and uses it correctly. He told his parents he wants a key boundary in writing in a calendar that isn't a family group text. He told his sister her boyfriend can't move in while I'm paying to be there. He told me he understands why I walked. And then last night, he asked me to marry him in a sentence that didn't have a single number in it. I told him I won't say yes in a house that isn't ours. Update 3. Small claims was on a Wednesday. Fluorescent lights, a clock that ticks too loud, plastic chairs that stick to the back of your thighs. The clerks swear they run 25 cases before lunch. I believe them. His mom came with him in a cardigan the same color as a manila envelope. She tried to hand me a check in the hallway, 5 now and 5 next month, let's just end this, but the envelope was blank inside, just a folded note with "we love you" and a phone number for their family CPA. I told her I'd rather let the judge decide. It took exactly 11 minutes. The judge skimmed the packet I'd printed at FedEx, the venue contract, the emails with his name in the subject line and his ox in the body, the retainers that were non-refundable the second we press send. He tried to argue we were in the exploratory phase. The judge read the word non-refundable out loud like he was playing bingo. "This is reliance," he said, and then he explained what reliance was to my boyfriend, like he was reading from a civics textbook. Judgment for me, $10,000 plus filing fees, 30 days to pay before I can start the part with sheriffs and liens. I walked out with a stamped paper that felt heavier than it looked. The house detonated the next day. At 7:05 am. House ops went from quiet to siren. Photos, all caps, then a close-up of an orange sticker slapped across the front window, "Stop work, no permits." Someone had pulled down half a wall to see what was behind it, and the neighbor 2 doors down, she has a Camry with a UCLA decal and is always sweeping her driveway, called the city after a shop vac ran until midnight. An inspector did a drive-by, saw the naked studs, and left a love note the color of a traffic cone. The sticker says civil penalty on it. It's big enough that you can read it from across the street. I knew there was a second sticker, a yellow one, because a pinhole leak turned into a wet ceiling, and then the wet ceiling came down on its own. The copper is so old it looks like a penny rubbed flat. An army of fans showed up. The sister's boyfriend did too, carrying a bundle of hangers. Her text, "It's fine, he'll be here temporarily." He set the hangers down on the dining table and reached for a roll of blue tape like he lived there. My boyfriend called me from the driveway. I could hear the fans in the background, a low hurricane. "I can't hear myself thinking there," he said. I told him he didn't need to. I told him to come over. He arrived at my little back house with a duffel bag and the house ops thread still painting his jeans pocket. He put the bag down and didn't touch it for an hour. My dog forgot he'd ever been mad at anyone and flopped onto his feet. We ate lemon pasta out of bowls because all my plates were in the dishwasher. He turned his phone face down on the table and left it there, and then, after a breath that sounded like somebody opening a window, he slid the key to the bakehouse across my table and said he wasn't going back to sleep there. He went home the next morning to get a suit jacket for a client lunch and changed the locks on his bedroom door instead. His dad texted him a photo of the new orange sticker and 3 question marks. He texted back, "Not my project." He took himself off autopay for utilities on the spot. It felt like watching someone step off a moving walkway they've been on since childhood, wobbly, then suddenly steady. There was a notary at the Up store on Friday. We met his parents and his sister by the greeting cards. He handed over a list of every cent he'd put into the house since day one: inspection, appraisal, the half he fronted for the electrician who consulted, 5 trips to Home Depot where the receipts say things like SJU cord and a pack of 12 tilt latches. He had his own manila folder this time. The notary asked for IDs, stamped the block where you can still smell the ink, and watched my boyfriend sign a quitclaim deed, then tied his name from the property. His parents wrote him a check, actually wrote 2, one to square up what he'd put in plus a clean, round number they called for clarity. It wasn't a windfall. It was enough. The sister cried in the parking lot and then, 15 minutes later, sent a long text about betrayal and family legacy and how the neighborhood is the point. He wrote back that he hoped her boyfriend liked fans. His mom hugged me by the red box like she was apologizing for something bigger than a sticker. I didn't hug her back. I said thank you for the money, because I'm a person who has learned to call things what they are. That night we sat at my tiny 2-top under the lemon tree and made a list that wasn't a spreadsheet. It had 3 lines: 6 months of separate leases, therapy every Tuesday at 7, no proposals until there's a front door with our last name on the mailbox. He said okay to all 3. He asked if he could leave a toothbrush. I said yes, and I cleared a cup for it that had used to be 4 wooden spoons. He turned off notifications for house ops and handed me his phone and told me to do it too. I did. It went quiet the way a house does after a party, a little echo, then normal. On Sunday we drove past the big house because we are both nosy. The yellow sticker was curling at one corner in the heat. The sister's boyfriend had hung a plant from the porch beam and it was already crooked. A city truck idled under the jacaranda, and the inspector walked out holding a clipboard and a face like he'd seen 20 of these this week. My boyfriend didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. He turned right at the light and we went to the beach the way we used to. Coffee in the cup holders and nothing urgent in the back seat but a folded towel. The judgment hit the portal on Monday final. He Venmo'd me the first $5,000 with a note that said per judgment. It's not romantic. It is adult. He told his dad to stop texting me about credit cards and his mom to stop dropping off foil pants. He told his sister he's out and meant it. He started a folder on his laptop called Ours. It has two things in it: a photo of a two-bed townhouse in a neighborhood that is not the best but is walkable and calm, and a screenshot of a calendar that just has our names on it. Update 4. The orange sticker bread. By the next week there was a white envelope with a city seal tucked under the doormat like a wedding invite from a bureaucrat, notice of administrative hearing. It had a date, a case number, and a kind of wording that means bring a licensed contractor or a checkbook. His sister texted a screenshot and a paragraph about how it would be great optics if my boyfriend could attend and clarify our intent. He called me from the produce aisle at Vaughn's, put her on speaker, and said the sentence our therapist had made him practice twice: "I'm not an owner and I won't be appearing as one." She hung up so fast we both flinched. A day later, his dad tried a flanking maneuver with a bundt cake. He appeared at my gate with it like a peace offering and said they had some forms they wanted my boyfriend to sign to keep things smooth with the city. We stood on the gravel between the rosemary and the lemon tree and I heard myself ask if the forms were in exchange for the cake. He blinked, then he laughed, because he's not a villain, he's a dad with a contractor on speed dial who doesn't understand where his son stops and the family starts. My boyfriend didn't take the pen. He took the cake and told his dad he'd see him for dinner when we planned it, not when a hearing notice told us to. The next morning, he called the number on that notice of hearing and told the clerk calm as a spreadsheet that he couldn't be of help because he had no ownership interest. I heard the little click in his voice that happens when you file something in your head under "not my problem." It was new. It looked good on him. The house responded like a corner amble. Someone scheduled a consult with a guy whose card had a bulldog on it and the word permit spelled wrong. The fans ran at odd hours. An Amazon package with a faucet inside sat on the porch for 3 days in 92-degree heat because nobody could agree who should open it. The sister's boyfriend posted in a neighborhood Facebook group asking for a casual framer, cash okay, and you could practically hear the code enforcement truck turn its blinker on. The neighbor with the UCLA decal started taking photos with dates stamped on them. Meanwhile, I did something I hadn't had room for literally or otherwise. I called City Hall for myself. I made a little folder on my kitchen table labeled sunroom in Sharpie and found a draftsman on Thumbtack who uses words like "is built" without blinking. He came on a Tuesday with a laser measure and an engineer's pencil and drew my not quite square room with the kind of attention that feels like love when you've been winging it. I paid plan check fees in a line where someone behind me was arguing about a fence. Raoul the inspector stood in my doorway and told me I needed smoke detectors in 2 rooms and to strap my water heater, and then he leaned down to scratch my dog's nose with 2 fingers and said, kindly, "This is fixable." The blue paper that says application received is taped to my fridge next to a postcard from Monterey and it makes me breathe easier when I reach for milk. In the absence of chaos, other things got quiet. The traveling nurse started her contract and is the sort of perfect roommate that only exists if you pray to a very specific god. Tupperware labeled with her name, gone 3 nights at a time, dishes rinsed before the water gets cool. My landlady left a bag of peaches on the stoop with a note that said, "These needed you more than me." Therapy kept being on Tuesdays. We started leaving with homework that wasn't a crisis plan, but a question about what we want our kitchen to smell like at 6 p.m. on a Sunday. The answer, that week, was onions and a dog at our feet. He kept paying the judgment in real numbers, that clear. The second transfer hit on a Thursday at 4:11 a.m. p.m. Memo feel identical to the first per judgment, and when the last one landed, I walked to the courthouse in Flats and filed a form that says paid. The clerk stamped it and said good for you like she meant more than court procedure. His mother texted me a heart an hour later and I didn't write back. There was one more attempt to lasso him back in. His sister CC'd him on an email to a city address with a subject line that read urgent family home and a paragraph that used phrases like family legacy and neighborhood fabric. He replied all the best and took himself off the thread. She added me to house ops again to ask if I could grab a package that had been kicked to their porch. I took my boyfriend's phone and helped him leave the conversation without announcing it. It felt like stepping off a porch without tripping. On a Sunday with marine layer still hanging low, we went to see the townhouse from the photo in the folder called Ours. It was not a jewel box, it was beige and honest, with a front door that sticks a little on humid days and a strip of dirt out back that could be an herb garden if we are brave. The property manager had keys on one of those long metal rings that make a noise you can hear in your bones. She said they allow small dogs, if the humans are responsible, and my dog wagged like he understood, PR. We walked the loop around the complex. A woman with a stroller watered a succulent with a measuring cup and the air smelled like dryer sheets from the communal laundry. We stood in the kitchen with our hands on opposite sides of a counter that had seen better granite and watched the manager test the light switches with the unbothered competence of someone who has done this twice a day forever. He looked at me the way he does when he is about to show me a number, and instead he asked if I wanted to come back when it was empty, just us, no one's mom in the pantry. We came back on Wednesday with a cashier's check and 2 pence. He signed his own name without a witness who shares his DNA. I signed mine next to it and didn't feel the urge to Google anything. The manager handed us 2 fobs and a slender brass key on a blue tag that said M at 12, and I swear to you, that little bit of plastic weighed more than the Quicklane had. We drove over there after dinner with nothing but a roll of paper towels and a bottle of Windex because I am a person who learned you don't move your heart into a place without wiping the counters first. He opened the door and it made that baritone sound glossy paint makes, and the echo of our voices was the kind that leaves room for pictures that aren't hung yet. He didn't propose. He didn't even reach for a pocket. He took a felt tip pen and wrote our names on the little strip under the mailbox slot, not hyphenated, just next to each other like a truce. He slid it in. It looked like a promise that fits on one line. A minute later his phone buzzed. It was a photo from the Big House group chat he hadn't quite disabled. Everywhere the yellow sticker had peeled entirely and someone had taped it back up with blue painter's tape and crooked strips. He silenced the thread, finally, to the bone. We lay on the floor and looked at a ceiling without water stains and talked about what to put on the wall above. The couch we don't own yet, whether lemons could grow in half sun on a little square of dirt, and how quiet feels like a thing you can move into if you schedule it. The only time I checked the time was to make sure I could get back to meet Raoul for the strap inspection the next morning. I passed. Raoul stuck a green tag on my water heater with a staple gun that snaps like a photograph. On our way out of the permit office, we ran into the neighbor with a UCLA decal. She was carrying a file folder that said code case and 2 iced teas. She told us the sister had brought a binder to the hearing and the inspector had brought a stack of photographs 3 inches thick and that the fans were off now because the power had been cut in the room with the open ceiling. She did not look smug. She looked like somebody who has lived on that street for 30 years and prefers walls that get put back up right. We nodded like people who no longer live there and meant it. That night, under the lemon tree, my boyfriend asked me if I wanted him to move the toothbrush to the new place or keep it here until the lease starts. I said there was room for 2 in a glass by the sink either way. He grinned and didn't take out a spreadsheet. He just took out the key again and turned it over in his hand like a coin he planned to spend carefully. In the morning, we drove to M at 12 with a dog bed and a stack of clean towels, and the first thing we carried over the threshold was the map from my back house that just says hi. The mail slot clacked once when a coupon booklet hit the floor. It had both our names on it, elementary and perfect, flimsy in the hand and heavy where it counts. Update 5. We moved in with the kind of ceremony you give to an honest thing, 2 trips in a borrowed Prius, a pizza box sweating through the seat, the dog pacing every room like he was taking attendance. The M at 12 door still sticks in the morning when the fog hangs low, but at night it opens like it knows us. I line the cabinet with contact paper that looks like marble if you don't blink too fast. He assembled a lamp without swearing. We slept on a mattress on the floor the first night with the windows cracked and the whole complex humming dryer vents, a laugh you can't place, somebody dropping a pan and then apologizing to no one. Raoul came back to my house with same clipboard and the same softness around the eyes and signed the line that makes a sunroom a room. He stood under the little soffit with a laser measure and said finale out loud in the same tone people say congrats. The permit card is a rectangle of green that looks like hope at Office Depot. I put it in the folder with a thick paper that said judgment satisfied and the thinner one that says Holok, and then I took my dad to breakfast at a diner with orange vinyl booths and gave him a cashier's check across the laminate. He folded it once and slid it into the inside pocket of a jacket he's had since before I was born and told me the lemon tree is taking to the pot. He didn't say he was proud of me in words. He said, now you can breathe. The big house went to court in a room that isn't a criminal court but wears the same shoes. I didn't go. The neighbor with the UCLA decal did and saw the sister trying to hand in a binder like it was a book report. The hearing officer talked about load pass and his builts and return to lawful condition, phrases that sound like a spell if you need them to. There are fines, not ruinous but real, and an order that has verbs in it. The orange sticker got a cousin a red one this time, smaller but angrier. The boyfriend put an ad up that said cozy room in Westside Gem with 3 emojis and a photo with the stop work peeking in the corner like a ghost, and an account with no face message to ask if the kitchen had been demoed with permits. The ad came down 10 minutes later. The sister texted my boyfriend to ask if he'd swing by for the inspector follow up and represent the family, and he answered with 10 words, I am not an owner and will not be appearing. She sent back a paragraph in a rush of blue bubbles and then added me to house ops again like that was a punishment. He took my phone and showed me how to mute a conversation so deep it may as well be a tomb. His dad tried one more gambit with charm. He asked if he could come by wth to drop papers and see the place. We let him see the place on Saturday at 2 with iced coffee on the counter and the dog behind a baby gate so there wouldn't be any excuse to say sorry and stay. He stepped exactly 6 feet in and told us we had good light. He held Manila like a life raft and slid 2 forms across the gloss of the island: authorization for gas and a letter that said responsible party. My boyfriend picked them up the way you pick up somebody's baby you don't want to drop. He put them back down on the exact same shadow they made. I can't sign anything, he said, and pointed to the quitclaim like it lived in the air between us. His dad looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with fans. He took the papers back. He took a cookie I bought at Ralph's and said it was good like it surprised him. We made a home in the negative space. He got a keychain that isn't a branded phone thing from a landscaping company. I put our names in tiny print on the buzzer list, and a ups guy tried it and then called me ma'am on the sidewalk like respect could be delivered in a padded envelope. The traveling nurse left me a note that said she loves the light in the sunroom in the late afternoon and could she please put a low bookshelf under the window, and that's the kind of sentence that makes you say yes on instinct. He took himself to a bank that doesn't have his family surname on a plaque and sat with a loan officer who has a cactus on his desk and said, plainly, that he wanted a pre-approval for something with a 2 in front of it, not a spreadsheet, not a fantasy. He came home with a letter in a folder and the look men get when they've stood up straight for a long time and realize it doesn't hurt. We tried on a couch from Facebook Marketplace that was a deal because it had great bones. The bones did not fit through the stairwell. We laughed in the hallway while a kid with a scooter waited politely for us to surrender and the dog rested his chin on the arm like it belonged to him. We bought floor cushions from Target and ate take-out dumplings sitting cross-legged like college kids with nicer plates. He learned where the trash chute jams and the trick to jiggle it without waking the unit above. I learned which neighbor taps her way down the hall and heels at 6:12 a.m. And that she sings to her baby in Spanish on the elevator when she thinks nobody can hear. The big house tried to sell itself as an opportunity. We went to the open house like we were curious about a celebrity sighting. The agent had lemon water in a plastic dispenser on a folding table and the kind of smile you put on when you're paid. The red sticker was taped to the window behind a piece of printer paper that said please use side gate. You could see the line where the wall had been and then hadn't and then had again in a worse mood. A man in a Patagonia vest asked out loud whether a creative buyer could just close it up and call it a day. The agent said you'll want to talk to the city so many times it started to sound like the chorus of a song. We left with out taking a cookie. We are learning moderation. There was a day with the power out at the big house for panel upgrade scheduled and then panel upgrade cancelled, a text chain thick with electrician names and somebody's cousin who does great work cash. The UCLA neighbor waved at me at the farmer's market while picking out tomatoes and said she sleeps better now that there are no shop vacs past midnight. She asked after my dad. I told her the lemon tree loves the spot by the back fence and she nodded like son is a plan. We had our first, almost fight and end at 12. It was about nothing how high to hang a mirror, which shelf gets pasta versus cereal, but it wanted to be about everything. He started to make a joke about amortization like he always does when he's scared. He stopped himself midway through the word and just said, softer, where do you want to see yourself when you reach for a spoon? I pointed to the left of the stove and we moved the drawer together. Later, at therapy, our person asked what the house smells like at 6 p.m. And I said garlic and rosemary and he said Joy dish soap and someone's dryer she eats on the air from the courtyard. The 3 of us sat there nodding at a smell you could live in. He finished paying the judgment. The last transfer hit on a Tuesday at 3:03 p.m. With the same memo, per judgment. I walked to the courthouse again and filed the line that says satisfied and thought about the word. It is old and simple and doesn't need a spreadsheet. When we got home, there was mail with both our names printed together like someone at a data entry job believes in us. It was a circular for a chain gym with a free week coupon attached. We put it on the fridge for the comedy of it. His mom texted a photo of a pan of enchiladas and wrote, "We have extra if you want to swing by." He wrote back, "We'd love to have you over Saturday, 6:30 a.m., we'll make the salad." They came on time and didn't open any cabinets. His dad told a story about a boss he had in '98 who thought permits were a racket until his deck slid 2 inches in the rain. His mom used a dish towel for her hands like a person who understands she is a guest. The dog put his head on her knee and she cried a little and wiped at her face like she didn't expect it. When they left, she put foil in her tote instead of on my counter. We are rewiring at the speed of dinner. On a Wednesday with a marine layer stubborn and school starting back because the streets around us had a new line of subs at 8:05 am, the sister sent my boyfriend a PDF of cohabitation agreement language she'd found online and asked him to sub in our names so we can be covered moving forward. He replied with one sentence, "I'm not cohabiting with you." He didn't feel mean saying it. He felt accurate. Accuracy is what you get when you stop bargaining with your own gut. The first thing that bloomed in the dirt strip out back at Amnet 12 wasn't Arab. It was a volunteer tomato, probably a gift from the neighbor upstairs who composts with real devotion. It came up with 2 leaves and then 4, stubborn and joyful in bad soil. I staked it with a chopstick and a piece of blue painter's tape because that's what we had. He came outside barefoot with coffee, looked at the tape, and laughed. "Permits," he said, and kissed me on the forehead the way you kiss a career that is finally yours. We drove past the big house on our way to the beach on Sunday, not to Rubberneck, just because it is still on the way things are. The sign out front said price improvement in a font that wanted to be soothing. The red sticker was paper clipped to a plastic sleeve now, bureaucratic couture. The porch plant the boyfriend hung was crisp to the edges like a bad blowout. My boyfriend didn't even turn his head. He put his hand on my knee and squeezed twice, the old code for "I'm here." We got coffee with lids that never fit right and sat on the sand and watched a kid try to fly a kite with no wing. He ran, and then the kite finally caught and the string went taut and the dad yelled "look." And the kid laughed like the only thing in the world was blue. He didn't propose. He didn't pull anything out of any pocket. He adjusted the hinge on the sticky door at Anna's 12 with a stubby screwdriver in a YouTube video and then wrote a tiny note on masking tape inside the frame that said August 18 adjusted, held. It's not romance in the way people sell it. It is, however, that quiet I asked for, written in pencil, living on a door we can both walk through with our hands full.